Hello and welcome to the show that debates the hottest issues of the day. This is The Big Picture and I'm Athar Khan. A struggling government today caved in to pressure over the first increase in rail fares for over 8 years, announcing a sweeping rollback just days after the Trinamool Congress forced the resignation of then Railways Minister Dinesh Trivedi. The first order of business for the new Railway Minister Mukul Roy was pretty clear after he replaced renegade TMC stalwart, if I could call him that, Dinesh Trivedi. And along expected lines, the fare hike was rolled back, with the new Railway Minister dubbing the hike a huge drain on the pockets of the Aam Aadmi. The fares for the second-class suburban and non-suburban sleeper AC chair car and AC 3-tier have been rolled back. The fare in AC 1 and AC 2 classes were kept untouched, however. Last week, Mukul Roy's predecessor had raised it to 15 paisa per kilometre for AC 2-tier and 30 paisa per kilometre for AC 1. More importantly, the new rail minister has kept on hold the decision to set up a committee to explore the possibility of an independent tariff regulatory authority. The proposal to expand the railway board has also been scrapped. This is a setback to the already cash-strapped railways, as it is expected to lose over 7,000 crore worth in revenue that could have come its way as a result of the proposed hikes. Now, if you look at the amount in the context of the railways, 7,000 crore might not be an overwhelming figure, but it raises the age-old question of whether sweeping populism should come before the fiscal needs of a corporation that is bleeding. Tonight, on The Big Picture, we discuss the state of the railways after the rollback, especially given the fact that they are losing money with no new avenues of raising much-needed funds. We'll also discuss whether the government lost yet another crucial reform battle due to compulsions of a coalition government. And joining me in the studio is Shoma Banerjee, National Policy Editor of the Economic Times. Thank you. You're back on the show again. It's my pleasure to have you on the show again. Also on the show today is A.V. Paulus, former Financial Commissioner of the Railways as well. So, welcome to the show. So I'll start the show with Shoma, if I could. Now, is this rollback a telling statement on the inability of the government to rein in truant allies, if I could call them, like the Trinamool Congress? They've been cut by Mamta Di before and they've done it again. Has the government capitulated again? And it happened in FDI and retail. It happened now again. What is the government doing?
Well, I think this is a complete loss of face for the government. If you just take the Prime Minister's statement, which followed the resignation of Mr. Dinesh Trivedi, who was the former railway minister. How many times have we really heard a prime minister say that he accepts the resignation of his cabinet colleague, but he regrets his departure? I mean, what kind of authority does this show for the prime minister over his own team? It, I think, shows the prime minister in a very, very weak spot, if you may call it, that he's not able to even carry out his conviction. He had his conviction in the man, and in the man, in this case, was in his policy or in his proposal for the budget, and his hands were tied. So the government, Mukul Roy getting up today and rolling back whatever was proposed, I think it's a huge slap on the UPA government's face. And I don't know if Trinamool can really be called an ally anymore after this, because I don't think allies can put the parties, the ruling party in such kind of a position.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I'll come to Mr. Paulus after this, but let me continue with you, Shoma, and ask you, how long can the government really keep putting off key reforms like the hikes that we saw? They've got some clandestine support, if I could call it that, from Mulayam Singh now. I mean, he has 22 MPs. Do they really have to rely on Mamta Banerjee so much? I think I read somewhere today that if the government doesn't rein in allies, they should let them go and get new ones.
Yeah. So that's the speculation going on in the political circles, as you're well aware, and in the power corridors. It's about getting the right kind of support from Mulayam or from Samajwadi Party. From what I hear, Samajwadi Party itself realizes the need to have a friendly center, and so it actually is a win-win for both parties. I think it's about, you give a rope to your partner to go, and then you get a noose which hangs around your neck. I think the case is similar with Trinamool. I really don't see the Trinamool carrying on as it is in its current stand for long as an ally within the party, because this kind of puts the party and its policies in quite a difficult position. And, actually Mamta's bluff over this whole poor people thing can be called off very easily. Because, she and her party men particularly have talked about freight hikes, and I think that touches the man even more. A hike in your cost of delivery, transportation, or pushing traffic from rail to road is going against the interests of the common man as far as vegetable is concerned, milk is concerned. I mean, these are things which come to your household. So, I mean, I think Mamta's bluff can't be on for too long.
For too long, obviously.
Yeah.
Let me come to someone who's been in the railways for quite a while now. You obviously know how the railways really work, the internal machinations. You were financial commissioner before. Now, the expected revenue out of these hikes that the railways was expecting was around 40 billion rupees. Now, railway insiders now say, after the rollback, they only expect 2 billion rupees now. How badly did the railways need that money?
Now, I would start off with 2 points. One is, as soon as the budget was presented, Pranab Mukherjee stated that it was approved by him and it was absolutely essential and it's a government's budget. Now, and very meekly it has been rolled back now. Now, as far as passenger fares are concerned, for the last 8 years no adjustment has been made, and costs have gone up like anything. Energy costs have gone up, wages have gone up, and no adjustment has been done for 8 years now. A study done some time back showed that only about 60% of the cost of operations of passenger services was being recovered. Annual loss on passenger services is about 20,000 crores, and this is loaded on to freight traffic. Result is, freight traffic is shifting to the road or other modes of transport.
And the railways are losing out there as well.
Out on that. When soon after independence, railways had nearly 80%, 90% of the freight traffic. Today is less than 30%. Now, how do we go, what do you go from this?
Right.
Now, nobody is affected more by passenger fares than the people are affected more by that.
Fair point. We'll also talk about, let's talk about what the railway budget had in store and what the railway budget presented and wanted to do. On your screen you can see graphics right now that should come any second. Now there it is. Long-term goals that obviously safety comes first. Consolidation, that will not happen now because they have no money. Say another point, decongestion and capacity. The capacity will not come if they don't have any revenues coming from anywhere. Modernization, long-term projects that need to be started will not come because obviously they have no money. Operating ratio they had to improve from 95%. Now, see, these are all things we saw in the railway budget. Now, obviously, when they have no source of revenues coming in, that would be quite impossible for the railways to maintain that, wouldn't you? First Mr. Paulus and then Shoma.
The investment funds had to come from the internal revenues. It will not come now. We'll have to keep on borrowing from the general revenues. What money invested by the general revenues is perpetual loan, perpetual interest-bearing loan. There is no repaying of it. So, you keep on adding the capital charge, your interest liability, you call it dividend, but it is nothing but interest. That liability increases from year to year, and there is no reducing it. And where do you find the money from? We are talking of PPP, public-private participation. And the experience so far has been nil, I would say.
It hasn't been a good one. Shoma, you were making a point.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is that you heard Trinamool leaders, party leaders, I think Mr. Shrudeep Bandopadhyay made a statement right outside Parliament that if the government can provide XXX amount for food subsidy, then why can't it provide a subsidy to the railways? Now, the question is, in food subsidies, where is your alternative way of a revenue? In railways, there is an alternative way of revenue, number one. Number two, I mean, you know, this whole thing of scrapping the proposition of having a regulator in every field today, particularly utilities, where the government finds it difficult because of its political compulsions to take hard decisions of raising tariffs, you have constituted a regulator who's going to be independent and is going to be taking a call on these hard decisions. You have so in the power sector, you have so in the, in telecom, you have so in airports, you have in every sector. Railways was just about beginning to do so by kind of distancing itself from the tariff rationalization or tariff orders, which could have been then taken independently, taking costs into account. But here is a railway minister who, and I definitely want to remind your viewers that Mr. Mukul Roy was the same railway minister, then a minister of state when Mamata Banerjee moved as the chief minister of Bengal, who refused to go to a railway accident site even when the Prime Minister asked him so. And today we have reinstated the same very person as the cabinet railway minister now, who has gained, I'm sure, some electoral position by rolling back everything, not only fares, but even features which would actually work to the long term of the railways. So, I mean, we really don't know if these are real representatives of people at all.
Fair point. You made an interesting point. We'll talk about the economics of the issue after the break. Short breather right now. Don't go anywhere. We'll come back with more railway talk after this break. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Picture. Now, before we go on to the discussion, we'll show you some more graphics that the railway budget had budgeted in for. In fact, should come up on your screen any moment now. There it is. Amenities for passengers were supposed to come back and were supposed to improve installation of 321 escalators at important stations, state-of-art mechanized laundries, all these services that the railways had budgeted for, SMS on passenger mobile. All this requires money, remember. All this requires a large chunk of money which the railways will not have now because of these rollback of the hikes, introduction, setting up AC executive lounges in important stations. Someone had said, I think, a while back that they want to make railway stations like airports. Now, in fact, all these amenities that they had kept in mind for the railway budget. Now, very simple economic question to you, sir. 65% of the revenues that railway gets, 65% apparently comes from freight. It used to be 35% for passengers. It has come down now to 27%, according to my figures. There are total 19,000 railway coaches in operation. 12,000 of those are passenger cars. Isn't it flawed economics? Pure, simple flawed economics. If your passenger cars are 12,000 out of 19,000 fleet or whatever you call them, you're rolling back passenger hikes. Isn't that flawed economics?
No. They don't work it on the economics basis. This is purely political, ideology driven. It is not cost based, or it is ideology driven. Now, in this, the one main important thing was that the independent authority, that should have been. It is charges for service. It is not taxation. So Parliament should not come into it really. It is out of the courtesy of the railway minister that is coming to the Parliament. Now, there should be an independent authority for fixing the tariff, and I would go take it a step further. There is a national policy for the railways. We have other sectors have national policies which should lay down the parameters for everything, investment, for pricing, for everything, and that will take away the discretion of the individual technocrat or the individual minister. It should be taken completely out of their purview. It should be done by a body of an independent tariff body.
Right. Shoma, a political question your way. Now, if the government has been burned by allies before, allies like Mamata Banerjee and other allies, why is it that the government keeps putting key ministries like the railways into the hands of people who have a history of making life tough for the government? Why does it keep happening?
You know, I wish I could answer this question, but, you know, answers to such questions are actually lying in the numbers that play out in a democratic system, and particularly in Parliament. We saw how the government faced flack over many of its bills, some of its bills waiting now for more than 2 and 3 years. So it does not have the comfort of the numbers which it should or could have. And for that, I think it comes back to people like you and me, because citizens actually deserve the government they get. So we have failed to give the absolute numbers that are needed for a government to move in any concrete direction. And we have therefore forced coalition governments. And coalition governments, in a way, it was good because people thought that regional politics got into the mainstream. But if regional politics remains regional in its outlook, is unable to see the national importance, and is only looking at electoral politics, then I think we're going to pay a heavy price economically and politically. Because don't forget, the same very people are people who are traveling. You know, we are paying service charge today, and I think even for your broadcast shows here now. And this is a cost. This is a cost you incur. Imagine that if you start listing out the sectors today in the economy where we are not even meeting costs, you'd be surprised. And how is the economy going to go on? There is just no set of revenue or magical way in which there could be money coming in for this to run. And Mamata Banerjee and her own party, you know, this has been cited in several discussions, and I would like to cite it again. Electricity tariffs have gone up in Calcutta, you know, and they say, well, the tariffs have gone up because it's a private sector, a company who runs the distribution. But there is a regulator which is sitting there who is approving these tariffs, and you've allowed. Tram fares have gone up in Calcutta, and brinjal, a very, very Aam Aadmi, or as Mamata would like to put it, Ma Mati Manush vegetable, costs 100 rupees a kg in Calcutta. I mean, where has all these concerns gone? If today you had to stand in the floor of the House and say, we are now doing things for the better of the people and we are rolling back.
It's like political doublespeak on the face of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think she has, the party lacks its conviction, and I think they try to take away this limelight by talking about things like, you know, we are not English-speaking people, and people have an agenda against us. You know, things which are lost in theatrics.
Shoma, let me follow up with another question now. obviously this episode, if anything, proves that in a coalition era, in a government that has coalition partners, coalition compulsions, anything that is presumed to be against the interest of the common man, the Aam Aadmi or the Maamati Manush, like you just said, will be resisted. Now, wouldn't that mean no diesel, there'll be no diesel hike, there'll be no petrol hike, meaning the budget will be in a complete mess? Isn't that?
No, I think Athar, most of the things that the government will need to do and need to do even more forcefully is to take executive decisions where it can. Freight rates, if you know, and have moved up considerably over the last few months, and that didn't have to wait for the budget. I don't think fares have to wait for the budget either. If the government wants, then a cabinet decision or an executive decision can be taken.
It's a charge for service rendered, price for service rendered. This is not a tax. It doesn't have to go to the parliament.
So they will have to take executive decisions if they want to move forward, because they do not have the numbers and the comfort of numbers in the government. And I think this government is now running out of time. You've finished your midterm and you've really not been able to roll out what you really wanted. And if they are really serious about coming back to power, they will need to move
with the numbers that they want. Mr. Paulus, let me ask you this. Input costs are rising, have been rising for years now. Now, the railways have been talking about new projects and getting done with something that has been started since the days of the UF government. Ram Vilas Paswan was the minister when they said unmanned crossings will be done away with. It's been 15 years now. Nothing has been done. No action has been taken now. How can the railways continue like
Whatever resources are available are spread over a number of projects very thinly. And nobody bothers about the viability of the projects. Now, all the publications, the works program, the explanatory memorandum, none of it shows whether the projects are viable or not. Now, you can find, even if you find money for investing in those projects, who is going to meet the losses that are incurred?
Exactly.
Because 60 to 70% of the pending projects are non-viable. That secret is not shown to anybody.
If I may just butt in over here, number one, I think it's time we start to look at the kind of projects announced by the former Railway Minister Mamta Banerjee. I mean, I'm told there are projects worth 60,000 crore. These have been announced. These have been approved in the parliament. Where is the money for all these?
Today, the outstanding projects, pending projects are 487 in number, requiring more than 1 lakh of crore rupees for completion, and 40 years.
So, Shoma, really, will the real Mamta please stand up? We'll continue this discussion after the break. We have lots more to talk about. The option in front of the railways, what they really can do to dig themselves out of this hole that they are in right now. After the break, don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Picture and we're discussing the state and the future of the railways. Mr. Paulus, if I could ask you this. There was a time when the railways were sitting pretty on a cash surplus. I think Lalu Prasad Yadav in his interim budget had said 20,000 crore surplus they had. The railways was in a good position. Now explain to us and give us a sense, and our viewers a sense, that surplus seems to have gone to waste somehow, or at least give us a sense of what happened to that money. Where did it all go?
Actually, it was not. No, it was not really surplus in that sense, in the ordinary sense. What he said was that he had investable resources of that much. That included the contribution to the depreciation reserve fund and the fund balances he had, the excess over the expenditure that he was able to collect during his period. And he had an advantage. The economy wasn't booming, and he brought in played a small trick. There was what was loading beyond the marked capacity of the wagon. Now, in any case, this overloading was taking place. So he said, for every wagon, the charge will be 2 tons or 5 tons more than the marked capacity. So that gave him a lot of money. Out of these extra earnings that he had, nearly 25% was on account of this. Another 30% was on account of the booming in the economy. So time was, and he left the entire thing to the railway board. Technocrats were running the show. He did not interfere in the actual running. And there was one young IAS officer who was his special assistant. He was very
Absolutely, absolutely. I think Shoma and I both know the man in question right now. Go ahead.
He went through all the pending reports. There were any number of expert committee reports pending with the railways. He went through all of them, picked up the points that needed to be implemented. He got them implemented, and the board was cooperating with him. Absolutely. So this was the trick, secret of the success of that period. And I would say, personally, I would say, it won't be wrong to call it the golden era of the Indian Railways in recent times.
Right. Do you agree with that, Shoma? Golden era of Indian Railways? Then?
Well, I'm not too sure because I'm not quite aware, but I would like to ask him, if you permit me, that what happened to that money? I mean,
money has been invested.
That was my question.
All the money has been invested.
Okay.
So this was investable surplus actually.
Right.
All the money has been put onto the projects. But whether they have been useful projects or not, nobody would be able to say.
Before I come back to Shoma, sir, one more question for you. The railways expect a loss of 15,000 crore after the rollback in passenger services. How can they make up for that? What options does the railways, do the railways really have in front of them right now?
They have no option now. They are banking on the PPP. It will not give them anything. They will have to depend on the government. And money they get from the government at capital charge is really interest-bearing loan in perpetuity, which no business organization can have.
It's not very attractive for them.
If we go according to the present practice, you will push it into the position where the Indian Airlines, Air India came, or even Kingfisher is now.
Right. Is there a danger of
I was just going to say, you're going to get another Kingfisher in the transport sector, this time the railways. But I think the problem is much more amplified. One, the number of people employed over here is far large. The sectors, its services, it's actually the backbone of the economy. Absolutely. Imagine if your railways aren't able to move coal wagons, food grain wagons. I mean, what are you going to see? You're going to see a huge tripling effect. Kingfisher stops 5 airlines and you have just people stranded who can't move from one city to another. Railways doesn't run 3 trains. And
it's a very valid point. It's the lifeline of the nation.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of things we're going to, and I think one important point, Athar, which I think Mr. Trivedi mentioned a lot, and I would like to emphasize on it, is that he said he was giving a lot of emphasis to safety. We saw another train accident even while the portfolio was getting changed.
Yeah,
I mean, so what are we talking about? We are not only talking about not adding new trains, not adding modern stations, SMS services I can do without. But can I do with a bogie which probably has run its life?
Shoma, if I could ask Mr. Paulus now, last question to you, sir, then I'll come to Shoma and close the show. What does the future really hold for the railways now? We've seen the government is really helpless right now for the reforms that they want to introduce, but they can't really do it. Where do you see the railways going? Is it going to be another Air India all over again, like Shoma said?
It has to operate on a commercial basis. That business line, the restructuring on business lines, as Trivedi has said, is the only answer for this. That's the only answer for this. And run it like a commercial organization, bearing only limited social obligations, which for the corporates, you are talking of 2% of the profit. Limit the social burdens on the railways to that level and allow them to function as a commercial organization.
Fair point. Shoma, last word on the show, as always. What is the priority, the biggest priority for the government right now in terms of the railways?
I think they don't have too many options. The budget is gone, but like I said, the budget is not the last document. They will have to take decisions beyond the parliament, beyond the budget, which is not something which is illegal or unparliamentary. It's a practice that has been followed, and the government will have to pick up its shoes when it has to and do things as far as tariffs are concerned and costs are concerned. There is no bank I can see who's going to come out and lend money to railways, or any private funding, or any ECB, as the government would like to say. Nobody is going to put your money on a project or on a company which does not earn its costs, which can't earn back its costs, and that's where we put railways today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shoma, for saying that. Thank you, Mr. Paulus. I must thank you for coming on the show. So, big task ahead for the Railway Minister and the government, of course. The railways, nobody wants it to turn into another Air India, another Kingfisher. Tough decision time for the government. That's where we end our show tonight. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye and good night.